So a brief overview of this thing. The whole thing has been disassembled and I've tried to clean it up as best as I can. The fan operates very well. I've taken apart the entire keyboard, cleaned that very thoroughly. All the keys operate very nicely. Track point operates very well. Screen hinges are very good. They hold in place very nicely. There's a little bit of kind of slack to them within a certain range, but I think that's pretty normal of a lot of hinges of this era. There's a couple pieces of plastic that were cracked on the side here. There's a slight crack here that I tried to fill in with a little bit of glue. There's a slight crack on the palm rest. But other than that, most of the plastic is good. I did have to replace the lid latch because the lid latch was broken. I decided to just omit the entire lid latch as the lid does stay closed fairly nicely. So I just 3D printed a small insert there so that it didn't look like a big hole. Speakers work very well. We've got a slot for the card bus, and I have a 3-COM network card and modem installed currently. There's a button over here that normally you click it like a clicky pen and it'll pop out, and then you rotate it and that pops out the CD drive. I did have to disable this. I took out the entire mechanism for it and just glued the button in because the mechanism was broken and the latch was permanently stuck out. So I figured if you want to remove the CD drive, it's fairly easy to remove. You just have to unlatch it from the front and just hold onto the CD drive and pull it out manually. It's not that big of a deal, and I think it's preferable to having this stuck out all the time. I did have to remove the rubber coating from the mouse buttons because they started to get slimy and gummy over the years. I think they were just deteriorating. So I decided to remove both of those and leave them as just the plastic. The buttons work very nice, it's just that they don't have a rubber coating anymore. So now we'll get this thing booted up and display the software. Alright, so now we have the Toshiba booted up to Windows 95. I do have a SD card installed for the hard drive. Current capacity is listed as 3.68 gigabytes with free space of 3.36 gigabytes. I do have a network card installed on here, so I'm just going to try to ping our gateway here, which works just fine. And with the networking, I do have a nice shared folder, and this works great even up to versions Windows 10. I'll come over here and see we're in our shared folder, and I will just paste a document in here and it shows up right over here. And I've used that to transfer a lot of games. As you can see, the track point on here works very nicely. The mouse doesn't drift at all, and it's quite sensitive, so I'm very happy that that all works. And this is a fairly clean install of Windows 95. There aren't a whole lot of games I know of that will run on Windows that don't also run better in DOS. So I've just got a couple DOS games that are in a folder on here. And for most of the DOS gaming, I do just reboot into DOS mode. And I do have a couple custom modes set up, which I will show in just a minute. Right now I'm just going to load up the Windows 98 CD, because that's what I've got in the drive. And the CD drive does work as intended. Alright, so here we're at our boot menu. By default, it loads Windows 95 and times out after about 3 seconds. Second option is to load DOS with maximum performance. This loads a minimal amount of drivers and doesn't have a whole lot of memory drivers. 3 loads up pretty much everything along with memory drivers, so you can get maximum free memory this way. Options 4 and 5 are basically the same as 2 and 3, just with CD-ROM support added. So let's try option 5 with CD-ROM support. And as you can see, we've got 618K free for programs, which should be enough for most games and programs. I think if we load it without CD-ROM support, it gets a little over 620. which should be enough for anything. So let's try accessing the CD drive from DOS. And it's going to spool up, and there we've got our Windows 98 CD. Come on, camera, focus. Alrighty, so now I'm going to actually reboot this. Alright, so now we're going to load it for maximum performance without any CD drivers. This should give the best performance for games that bring their own memory management, such as Doom or Duke Nukem. And actually we're going to use Duke 3D just as a test here. Now this laptop has a Sound Blaster compatible card, so it does work in DOS without having to do anything special. I think there is an optional TSR to manage things like the IRQ and all that, but it seems to work without it, so that's just the way I leave it. Now it is an FM synthesizer, so it doesn't sound as good as some wavetable synthesizers, but that's just my opinion, I guess. So here, let's try a new game here. As you can see, it runs pretty good in this resolution. I'm just using the default 320 by 200 resolution, and most games it runs pretty good like that. I haven't tried Quake with it. I don't imagine it's going to be blazing fast, but I'm sure it will run. Now this game would probably run with a higher resolution as well, but I tend to prefer the higher frame rate. One of the nice things is this does have a physical audio slider, so it's very easy to manage audio inside of this. And as another test here, I'm going to completely unplug everything from it, including power cord. So nothing in the back here. This is running completely off battery power. One of the things I was really amazed with is the fact that this actually gets really good battery life. I'm thinking someone must have replaced the battery over some time, because I can't imagine a 20-year-old battery would work this well. Now it does clock the processor down by about half when it's in this mode. And it does save a bit of battery power, but it does run a little bit slower. I've used a couple programs that seem to report the CPU speed as staying at 133 megahertz, so I'm assuming that it just inserts wait states or something to slow it down. It doesn't actually reduce the clock speed. So booting takes a little longer than usual. But if we go down to our battery meter, right now we've got about 74%. I don't know if the battery is fully charged. It usually shows about 93% when it's fully charged, so it doesn't go entirely to 100. But it usually goes up to about 93, and I've let this sit on a desk before, just idling at the desktop, and I've gotten well over an hour just idling at the desktop. So the battery is definitely good enough to use at least a little bit on the go.